Hi,
Hi.
this is Let's Talk Dating with Barry and Christine. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Christine.
Well, this is kind of a heavy subject. Sometimes we have lighter ones, but this is a pretty intense subject.
Well, let's see if we lift it up a little bit too.
Okay, we always find something to laugh about, so we sure will.
Yeah.
So, can you trust again after infidelity? Infidelity is such a betrayal. I mean, that's really the first thing I think a lot of people feel.
hmm
Am I not enough? Why did they stray? How come I didn't know? How did
What
they
didn't
keep
I
it
do? Yeah, all
secret?
that sort of stuff.
What did I do wrong? What did I not do right? I mean, I, I am going to give that to everybody that we're mad at them and then we're very hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we're hard on them and then we're back hard on ourselves.
Well, it becomes the ping pong between blame and shame. So what happens is that sort of back and forth,
Yes.
back and forward. Yeah.
Yes. And I tell people it's not always necessarily a death nail for the relationship, even if it might feel that way.
hmm
And it's certainly where we go first. I mean, often when I hear about people who were divorced, it's way over 50% of the reason.
Right.
Somebody cheated and they couldn't forgive. And so I think that's so important to talk about in the beginning that it feels unforgivable
Right.
initially. It just does. It cracks your heart wide open. It throws your ego into a tailspin. Your self-confidence can just get flushed down the toilet. I mean,
Got it. Yeah.
it's just I think it's really one of the worst things that can happen to somebody because it affects so many parts of our mental, emotional, physical well-being. And we think we can never trust again, trust them, or even anybody else for that matter. That has the long ranging
hmm
part. So, and there's lots of ways. I mean, I think people have different degrees depending on did they fess up? Did you discover? Did somebody else tell you about it? I think because I've heard all of those reasons, and it's been interesting when I've said, and what did you say and do, and how did you feel? And there has been a wide range given the circumstance of how they found out. I
Yeah.
think that that's really something to address, that mine was worse than yours because this is how I learned of the betrayal.
Yeah. It's a little different if you have if your partner tells you, or if you discover them in bed together. That's a whole different spectrum of feelings. So yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So you're going to feel like crap.
hmm
Hopefully they feel like crap too, the other person.
Well, this is okay. Before you go any further, I want to stop into that for a second. There's
Yes.
there's this thing. See, this is part of it. Is that yes, as you said, absolutely everything that people go through with that feeling of like, what did I do? What didn't I do? What could I do? Is that once the act has been publicized, and since you become aware of it,
Yeah.
one of the first things that shows up is the desire for revenge,
Yes.
to punish,
Very
whether to
important.
punish them or to do something equally abhorrent yourself.
Yeah.
Neither one of which actually change anything.
No.
Because if you do something back to them, it's going to be vindictive or some sort of hurtful thing. You're going to feel worse as well. And if you
Yes.
do something by cheating on them, as so getting you back against them, you're going to feel like like a hangover afterwards. So neither one of them actually works. But the temptation, because most of us are, I would say, educated, wired, programmed to think that when something like that happens, we can't fix it. Therefore, we do something to maybe to just cover it up or to basically ignore it in some way.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because I've heard those too. Well, I just didn't say anything. I hoped it would go away. I'd hope they wouldn't do it again.
Yeah.
And they're all viable options. They're all understandable. They're all normal, natural ways to feel and act. And I think the thing that's one of the hardest is it shakes your own self-confidence so much about, wasn't I enough, and how come I didn't know, and why didn't they say something, and was I ignoring things? And it, I think that's one of the hardest tailspins, besides I cracked my heart open to this person and shared it with all my innermost feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've decided to be with somebody else.
Well, on top of that is, perhaps the most painful one, is the fact is, they violated my trust. They crossed that line, or I should say, not even that, that's not the word we use, but they basically did what they shouldn't have done because we didn't agree to that sort of mandated rule aside. And that's one of the challenges is in relationship. I mean, it's funny in a weird way, not funny in a funny way.
No.
Is the thing about trusting after infidelity is one piece, but what do you do with trusting after money mistakes or health issues? Because those areas too, because money, health, and relationships are like the three biggest things in people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
But cheating has a special, what's the word I'm looking for?
More intimate. It's
category.
more intimate. But it's because I think it's more intimate.
Right. It's invasive. It's inside of you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting that you mentioned about money. So I will say an aside about that, because that could be a whole nother topic. This morning on the show I was listening to, I listened to a talk show in the morning, and they were saying since the pandemic, it was a financial guy, more than 50% of people have fessed up that they didn't tell their partner about money they spent, money they squirreled away, money they invested. I mean, that's a whole nother level of feeling like betrayal.
Right.
So that'd be such a fun topic. And the other thing that I learned this week is I have a recent friend who's a widow, and they had an open marriage. But the rule was, you need to tell me. I'm fine with it. And once he didn't.
Yep.
So he's
thing.
allowed.
Right.
But he didn't keep. So when you talk about that, the agreement, what agreement do you have?
That's one of the biggest pieces.
Gosh, like Jimmy Carter, I lusted in my heart. But I guess he told the whole world, including his wife. Or, gosh, doesn't she have hot legs or a cute butt? I mean, what kind of agreement do you have? Do you want him to just glance and not say anything? Is it okay if he ogles as long as he says something? So those are also part of the pieces.
That's the spectrum, so to speak. Yeah, it's true.
Yes, because I think there's lots of more women than men I've heard this from. That feels like a betrayal to them too.
Yeah.
When they look at somebody else or fantasize about somebody else or talk about, I mean, there was this whole thing the other day about who's your fantasy five, that if you ever got a chance, who would you? And like, it'd be okay that you say a star, but like the neighbor. So that was a whole nother conversation.
Well, because the star is unattainable, so to speak, in theory, whereas the neighbor's right next door so conveniently. It's like, when does that line get crossed? So absolutely, the threat level is much higher.
So even just talking about it. So it's one of those things where people go, why should I even talk about it? Especially if you're married, you said, you're going to be faithful and you're getting married in front of God and your family until death do you part. Did you really talk about, what if I'm feeling unsatisfied? What if I'm feeling neglected? What if I'm feeling unappreciated? What do you want me to do about this? Or what if you stop having sex with me? What are my options? And we need to talk about it. So I am not excusing at all anybody's behavior that's hurtful to the other person, ever. And there's certainly, because I've talked to so many couples in my practice, that there was definitely challenges in that I thought I said, I'm really feeling neglected. I'm feeling neglected emotionally or physically or mentally. And wow, I just started talking to this other person and they were starting to fill up this empty place in me. And we took it to the next level or maybe that was the physical part was the part you were missing.
Right.
And if you don't have an agreement that when you're feeling unsatisfied in whatever, you're going to talk about it and collectively come up with a solution, either together or with professional help, it can't just get swept under the rug. It can't just be not talked about. It can't not be addressed. So, oh my gosh, that's so often what I've heard, the impetus for the infidelity.
Yeah.
And even just emotional cheating. They've had an emotional affair. That's the word I've heard a lot.
Yeah.
Where
'cause
they
the
didn't
thing-
get physical at all, but they, talked about stuff. Because I would say, well, why didn't you talk about that with your significant other? Oh, they shut me down, or I couldn't, or it was too scary.
Right.
And this person felt safe. That's an intimacy that really needs to be reserved for your special partner.
Absolutely. Or a therapist.
Yes,
'Cause that's
but
free
not
for free.
another outside person that you're not paying
Right.
for that.
Because that's the thing, is that, just to be clear, with my intimacy, as this there's distinct difference in the way men view intimacy versus women view intimacy as well. So I'll just put that on the table too. Generally, and again, generalizations, not everybody, but most. So for women, intimacy is not just physical sex, which for a lot of men it is.
Yeah.
So that's a whole piece there. So we can leave that on the side for now. Is the sense that to trust somebody with your deepest, darkest secrets, whatever that is a level of intimacy that certainly women understand more than men generally do, but for both genders is important. So I think I tried to clean that one up. But the
I think
recognition.
you've done very well.
Well, thank you. And as the thing again is, and this is the thing about relationships, we have a tendency, including me, and we'll say we, not you, but we have a tendency oftentimes to not unearth the deepest, darkest things in the way. Like we don't go into dark places with our partner. We can do a whole conversation on that too. The thing is that in relationships, which is the challenge, is when we feel like we cannot, walk into that space with our partner because it will hurt too much. So I'll go with a neighbor or something instead. That's a violation of trust as well.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in a place where you're having some physical dysfunction of your ability to get for men to get their dick up, and they might think it's their partner. 90% of the time, it isn't. It's the man.
Mm-hmm.
So, but for men, they don't necessarily go seek help because that's so embarrassing. You don't go see a therapist for that, or go see a clinician or a sex worker or anything like that to get that sorted out. So there's things that people do, generally, again, not to say one gender or the other, where some lines come up to cross that we're afraid to. And so we actually do something worse to our partner because we're not going to cross that line with them.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than telling that fallibility or our mistake until we do something really abhorrent, then we tell them about.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be smarter to say at the front, like, I've been feeling this way and I was going to take it outside, but I want to talk to you about it first.
Mm-hmm.
Is that so scary versus doing that and then coming back after saying, I'm sorry, I cheated? And this is the mindset people get into because, and this is, I think, what happens a lot of times is, yes, there is a temptation piece, of course, but there's a lot of times with that violation of trust is it becomes something small and it just builds to a point where suddenly we go, I can only talk about it. And most of that stuff, frankly, is an internal spiral in here. It's nothing to do with the other person.
No.
If we just simply said up front, I'm feeling this way, can we talk about it? And if your partner does shut you down, let them know that, like, this is important for me. If you're not saying if you love me, because that's a ultimatum, but saying I really would love to have the safety to speak to you about this because I don't want to go somewhere else. Don't go see a therapist or whatever because I want this to be clean, open communication.
Mm-hmm.
And I said a lot in that piece. Hope that landed.
I think you've touched on so many important things, and that's the thing that I've coached couples about, of saying out loud, I really need to feel safe to talk to you about this.
Yeah.
And if you say no, then here's my 3 options. My 3 options are to just take care of myself. Maybe I'll get addicted to porn, be with somebody else, or leave.
Right.
What other options are there?
That's the thing.
Especially if you still have a desire for this person, you still love them, you still find them sexy, you find them somebody you really want to just curl up with and have wonderful lovemaking sessions with, and have intimate conversations, sexual ones as well as about what's going on inside of you. And if they're too busy, or they're mad at you, or they're whatever, not available for some reason, what are you supposed to do with these feelings? I mean,
Right.
that's torture for the other person. And I've seen it happen on both sides. But I do like how you said about, because it is different for men and women. And I will say it out loud because I get to say this since I'm a woman. When men say it's just sex, it's just sex.
Yeah.
Now, they can get intimately, emotionally connected to another person. Absolutely. And it often will come after having sex.
Mhm.
But they really can just have sex and not be emotionally involved, which
Right.
is very difficult, not impossible, but more difficult for women to do. So
Absolutely.
because of that, we assume you love them. You want to be involved with them. It wasn't just you wanted
That's right.
the closeness act, for a night. And then
Right.
you don't necessarily even need to see them again. It could just be that release, or it could just be that's all you do with them, that you don't even really talk about anything else about, except, what would you like me to do to you next? Really, I mean, I've
Yeah.
had those conversations with my clients,
Mhm.
and it's fascinating because we women want to go off in a very inaccurate direction a lot of times.
Yeah.
I'm still not making excuses for it. I'm still not saying it's okay, but I'm saying it's just often different. So
Yeah.
you said it and I said it. And I think it's very important for everybody to hear this, because women go, ooh, and I'm like, it's the
Yeah.
truth.
It is indeed.
You're
One piece on
not
that.
lying when you say that,
Right.
because we
So
think you are.
one piece on and in the back of that, or the piece in this that comes up too, as you said, it's like when one partner goes to the other partner and said, I'm feeling this way and I want to talk about it, and the other person shines you on.
Yeah.
It's something that takes effort, or I should say presence of mind, for either partner when they're in this place to say, what am I closing off and causing something else to happen? It's like, because the thing is, for example, if one comes to me, if I'm the man and she comes up to me, so she wants to talk to me about something that's really upsetting or challenging to her, if I go, well, I haven't got time for it right now. If I don't go, but I can talk to you about it tomorrow night, which will give us space.
Yeah.
And or I make it like I don't want to talk about it again. Well, I've already closed the door for the relationship, period, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that pushing away, which creates a redirection of the energy to go outside the relationship. Yeah, I think if more people caught that, whichever side of the conversation they're on, to go realizing come down, like you said, with the three options, to understand that the choice is being made by the refusal, or should say that the choice is being made by the other partner because of the refusal. And now much worse than if the person said, you know what, I'll take 5 minutes now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the lesser of evil type thing. We have this bad habit as humans to really, in some ways, be very selfish.
Yeah.
I mean, simply put, because
Yeah.
that sort of thing happens so many times where somebody else, particularly primary relationship partner, will come to us with something we don't want to deal with it or don't face it because we're focusing on our own thing, what we're doing at the moment, or we just don't want to be bothered.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, that person, our partner's going through some dark night of the soul, maybe, that if we really love them, we would be there absolutely for. But we fall in that bad trap of going, can't be bothered right now.
Yeah.
We need to make it
And
an
maybe
effort.
never. That's the thing
Maybe,
you're
yeah, never.
stressing.
Yeah.
Because if you say, is it an emergency? I can't give you my undivided attention right now. Let me finish this. Can I get back to you in an hour? Can we talk about it after dinner? I personally would go, oh, he does care. He cares that I'm having this challenge and this. I mean, that was when I told you, I've said it kind of a long time ago, and I'd say, when Tony come home and I go, okay, we can do the 10 minutes, because he wanted to just go direct to his office, but I needed my 10-minute debriefing, and he was good about it. I'd always have something for him to drink, and then he'd sit and listen. And then there were days I'm like, you're going to have to suffer for a half an hour. I just need it. I didn't overuse it, and I was careful about it, and I'd inform him about it, and I would be big about rewarding after, because when he did it, I'd go, I know this is extra hard for him. I know he's really putting himself out for me because he cares. And we have this agreement. It drew me closer.
Right.
That I love you just blow them off, because that's such a perfect word. Like the teenagers talk to the hand. That would make, I already am feeling at odds with myself.
Right.
That's going to just add to that fuel that I'm not going to be very happy with you. That just that 5 or 10 minutes of, oh, I see you're having a really hard time, and I just can't give you my all right now, but boy, I am ready for you in an hour. Or
Exactly.
I could give you 10 minutes, just give it to me. Could you give me Tony's big thing about the Reader's Digest? Could you just give me the Reader's Digest right now, and then we can do the long story later? And those are the agreements that people don't know to make, or don't want to make, or forget to make, especially in the heat of the battle. So those are some of the techniques that you and I talk about that give people a way of managing, oh, I just can't do 2 hours right now. Okay. And oh, is it going to be all about me and what a crappy person I am? Who wants to sign up for that? I mean, really, especially you've had a hard day too. So there's also ground rules for that. But this is what we're discussing is, what's the pay? This is the price of admission to stay in a relationship.
Yes.
It is. If you really want to have a close, loving, juicy, where they're going to want to listen to you when you're having a bad day, it needs to go both ways. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So work it out. And the best time to work it out is when you're not upset. So someday when I'm upset, this is the way I want to handle it. And how would you feel about that? And what about when you're upset? What do you want to do?
Right.
And often guys really do want a little space. Okay, I'm really upset. Let me go work on it. I'll be back. But I need you to be there when I come back. I really need to talk about this because you're my person. When you're my person, I need to talk to you. Exactly. And, oh, it's the kids, or I'm tired from my day. This is the most important thing in your life, because your children are very important. I stress that, but they're going to leave. Hopefully they're going to go off and have their own lives and their own families. And there you are together. And what in the heck are you going to do if you've not set this pattern and this foundation for later? And people are amazed when I say that to them, and they're like, oh, because that happens a lot.
Absolutely.
They look at each other and go, we don't have anything in common. If we don't have little kids to talk about, what the hell are we going to talk about? Where if you've already built up, who are you? Do I know you? We've kind of passed in the night. That's sad. Because I mean, I did weddings for 25 years, and they're just, most of them, so happy on the day and in love. And like, what happens later is often because they aren't doing this. They're not supporting each other. They're not being there for each other.
Right.
So let's say you've done everything really well. You've got all this groundwork and you've been doing really great together. And still somebody seeks attention, mental, emotional, physical attention somewhere else. Can you trust them ever again? And I'm here to say, you really can. But there's some steps that both of you have to make.
Yeah, it's not switched. Okay, done, easy. Yeah. I mean, for a lot of people, though, to be honest, that trust isn't going to be available to them unless they do some work. They go deep, and maybe they go see a therapist or a counselor or a guide, something like that. But also, and this is the thing, because I want to be the trust piece for a second too. That trust piece is like a muscle that you have to work. And for a lot of people, as we talked about already, about that communication piece, about not being available and not being responsive, that's weakening the muscle.
Yes.
And so the idea about, can you trust again after infidelity? It's not an on-off switch. And that's the thing we're going to talk about as we go forward in the show, is about how do you regain, rebuild, and restore trust in the relationship.
Yeah.
Because infidelity in some way I won't say it's an event. It's an interesting word to use it that way, but it's basically it's a moment in time, so to speak. It isn't a lifelong piece usually, but
hopefully.
we carry the judgment and blame and shame, as I mentioned earlier, the blame and shame game forward for weeks, months, years afterwards, unless we do something differently.
Yeah.
So that trust piece is something that, again, like a muscle, has to be worked and developed and built after it got depleted by that violation, for want of a better word.
Yeah, it's a great word.
Because the thing is, it is that violation of trust. It is something that was out of left field. It's like basically, if you can feel like someone just stuck a spear through your heart. If someone cheated on you, because and the thing is interesting because there's two kind of levels to this piece. One of which is when you suspect your partner is cheating on you, and when you find out the hard way that they weren't, you didn't know. The interesting piece is when suspicion shows up, the question is usually, what are they up to versus what could I have done? Where did that start from? What's my involvement? Not say that it's my fault, but we start looking at, and this is one of the recommended pieces to look at. If we go back as the person who was cheated on, simply go back and say, do I know where this started? Because if you did, that's a starting point. If you don't, it's okay. But if you did, it's a starting point. Because then we recognize that what we've actually done is stop trusting early. That's what's going on. If we realize we didn't respond or didn't interact, we've pulled back our ability to trust. Because the other part of this conversation, which is again back to what we said earlier, is that when that conversation happened, it builds trust between partners. When you say, "Yeah, bring your problem to me, I'll listen to you." When we keep casting them off, they can't trust you anymore. Maybe that's one of the reasons why they don't stay loyal and they go cheat, because they don't feel like there's any trust anymore, even though it's not true. But it's the feeling they get. So
that's the other thing. How much responsibility is each person? And I thought, I should have said this in the beginning. Yes, there's serial cheaters. Yes, there's people that will never be faithful. We're not talking about them. If you figure that out, please leave. Please exit stage left. I mean, if they're never going to be loyal to you, if they always are going to have relationships outside of their marriage without your permission, then that's not what we're talking about.
It's not serving you. There's a whole much better way of doing things. And reach out to us. We'll help you figure out how to navigate to choose a better relationship.
Get out of that one and get into a better one.
Exactly.
But what I really so often stress to the person who was unfaithful, how much remorse do you feel? How much regret do you feel? How willing are you to really see your part in it and what you absolutely need to do differently from this day forward to earn the trust back? No locks on your phone, no conversation. The thing I tell them that often starts is, you may not ever have a conversation with someone else you can't have with your significant other in the same room, ever. Unless it's a surprise party or something.
I was going to say the same thing. Birthday present, something like that.
But nothing personal. And what really, when they listen to me and they go, oh, and it's often about them, I go, So that's the conversation you're supposed to be having with them. If it's about them, your dissatisfaction, your frustration, your feeling dismissed, that's the conversation you need to have with them, not with an outside person.
Right, because it won't change with the outside person.
No, they can't change your relationship. They can only just be another piece. And if you haven't learned how to have that kind of conversation, you're not going to learn it by doing it with somebody else.
Exactly.
So we'll talk more about this.
Indeed, we will. Break.
We have lots more to talk about.
See you in a minute. And we're back.
And we're back talking about, can you really trust after infidelity? It's a big leap for people. It really is. So talking about with the person who was unfaithful, and how do they apologize? How do they earn the trust back? And what I've worked on with clients is that first they really have to regret what they did. They have to be really sorry, even if it felt justified, even if they had really good reasons. They still have to feel regretful. They still have to feel sorry they did it and apologize.
Right.
And find out what are the steps, what's the criteria that the other person needs. And I had mentioned, making sure their phone's available and unlocked, they can gain access to it at any time. And, typically that's something that is available in marriages. But if you're trusting, I never thought to look at my husband's phone, but if he had ever cheated, I would probably be looking at his phone a lot. And he would just have to have been fine with that. I need to, if it beeps or blings or rings, and I'm going to be maybe for a little while. I mean, it never happened, but I've certainly heard this enough. And you have to just be okay with that. And the same way with a woman, access to your computer and reporting in, this is where I'm going and this is what I'm doing. Because it's something nice to do in a relationship anyway. I think I told you when I was first married, I was out Christmas shopping and hadn't come home, and he's worried that I'm, dead in a parking lot somewhere, and I hadn't really had anybody to report to before. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really supposed to tell you it's 8:30 at night and I'm out still shopping, and I could have let you know it, because it wasn't a habit for me. I wasn't being necessarily inconsiderate, but it could feel very inconsiderate. And so when he brought it up, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I can't believe I did that. I'm just lolling around listening to Christmas carols and got all these packages. And I said, I won't do that again. And I never did. I was, I would check in because it's courteous, not because he was watching me or I felt controlled. It was just the nice thing to do. But you might have to do a little more after you've lost somebody's trust.
Oh, definitely. So we spoke right before the break, and then now here, I want to add these two pieces together, which basically means, so people are listening get this.
Yeah.
Is that whoever did the cheating, both partners have to do some work.
Both. Yes.
So let's be clear about that. So it's not about, well, they cheated on me, therefore they're going to do the work. It's like, no, because again, the piece is you won't be able to trust them if you don't do the work on yourself as well. Yeah. So what we're talking about here is key to understand that trust is, as I said earlier, it's not an on-off switch. It is a progression and an elevation. It's also a two-way street. And not to excuse the person who cheated, because we make it clear, as you said earlier, about that, you got to make amends, you got to do apologies. And again, if it's a serial cheater, all bets are off. That's a whole different conversation. But in this context of an aberration of one person doing something that violates the tenets of the relationship without the first person knowing about it or being approving of it, is one of those things that can be repaired. So to answer the question at the beginning of the show, the start of the show, yes, trust can be rebuilt again, like you said earlier. Yeah. But it also means that both partners have to do some work. And yes, the partner who strayed, for want of a word, and it's also not a pro forma thing. It's not a mechanical thing. It really is about bring your heart to the conversation. And if you need to explain, not to justify, but to own up to why it is that happened. I felt like our relationship was falling apart, or I may felt I wasn't enjoying with you, so I went somewhere else. Let them know, because first of all, it may give them some feedback. Not say it's about them, but secondly, it helps you express and get out all the gunk that you've been carrying around and why you did in the first place. Part of the healing for the person who cheated, because there may be healing there, is to by removing or unearthing or surfacing the stuff that led to the cheat in the first place. It's also about getting it out your system so you may not do it again. So it's important for that. But for the person who's been wounded emotionally and not had trust there, that trust muscle is something that has to be rebuilt. And it can be as simple as, it can sound really silly, where you start making new agreements with your partner. Where you basically say, look, if we're going to get this back on the level pegging again, we know it's not easy right now. We don't trust each other. Let's set up agreements, simple ones, where we say I'm going to do this and you do it. Because those little agreements that can be minuscule, like, I'm going to make you coffee in the morning, or I'm going to make sure I'm home by this time, or whatever that is, starts to build trust, because these repetitious things are additive, again, that builds trust over time. And again, and also just to be clear as well, the trust may never be where it was at the beginning. Because truthfully, the trust at the beginning was a default automatic. It wasn't really owned and defined and earned. So trust is something that can be rebuilt again. It'll be different. That's the other part of the way. You can't forgive and forget, because that's not how it works. And yes, with all the stuff we talked about earlier about blame and shame, both partners have to do the work, ought to do the work around the unresolved emotional baggage they're carrying against each other, because that's also in the way of the relationship being healthy and whole again. So good things to do.
So many good points. And one of the things I stress about the person who feels betrayed, who often will say, I could never trust them again.
Right.
Well, then you have to leave. You have to leave. How can you stay? I mean, really, honestly, ask yourself that question. How could you stay if you don't trust this person? Now, often, most of the time, I hear there's lots of reasons to learn to trust them again. So what kind of a work do you need to do internally as the person who felt betrayed?
Mm-hmm.
What would you need? Let's articulate it. Let's write it down. These are the agreements I'm going to need next time from now on. Yeah. And it's not just all I need from you, but what am I going to do? If there was parts in it, which usually there is, that I helped create this challenge, what am I going to do better and different? Because the temptation is to pull back even more because you're so damn mad and hurt and frustrated and upset. Well, I'm not going to give you an inch, and you got to give me 37 miles before I'm even going to give you an inch.
Yeah, I guess all unbalanced. It's not good.
Oh, and
because then it's punitive. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's awful. And the thing is, too, when it comes down to it, you didn't fall out of love with each other. You both still probably, and when it comes to, it takes a while to get to that conversation with people, but finally they'll say, because as mad as you are, nobody's going to make you that mad if you don't care that much about them.
Exactly.
You're like, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. So,
because if you didn't care if they cheated on you, wouldn't care.
You wouldn't.
So you must be invested, otherwise you wouldn't be upset.
Because I know people who don't care. They're like, leave me alone. Have a lovely time. I mean, really, I was like, okay. And it works for them. So it wouldn't work for me. But they stay in relationship this way, with this sort of unwritten understanding.
Yeah.
And they are not upset at all. But for the people who are really upset, I go, then let's have both of you work this hard to get back. And what I've heard is, what you were saying is, it's almost, I can say better, stronger, because it's this new agreement they didn't have from the beginning that might have, I mean, who knows, you needed to have this happen to have it get better. Okay, I'm fine with that, because you can't go back and undo it. But it's better because they went like, we never talked about this kind of stuff before. And when I tease about how you need to have the business of the relationship meeting every week, it's really fun when you have one of those and you're like, there really isn't anything. I'm fine because we've addressed it throughout the week. There's nothing I need to really have you stare in my eyes except to tell me you think I'm cute. I mean, I've loved these conversations and how people have come back from devastating feelings. So it can have a really, people laugh, it's beneficial, positive outcome if you can do it this way. Oh, it's really hard. It's so hard. It's so hard. Capital H hard. It's really hard.
But the thing about
this, do it by yourself, you just can't.
No, definitely not. I mean, I recommend definitely if you're working with a couple, you want to be with somebody who can be the neutral, I won't say referee, but the mediator. Would be a good thing to have. A referee.
It does sometimes feel like a referee, though. Go to your corners.
But the thing is also is that to affirm this, you're saying it's really hard. Is the thing is that we have this tendency again as human beings when we get into relationships, like, okay, put your feet up, done, you've arrived.
Yeah.
And that's the thing we do. So we don't set up paradigms, agreements, or efforts to make things better and better and better. So in a way, and I'm not saying this is the recent justification for it, but if something like this happens where there's such a big hiccup in the relationship, such a big stumbling block, aberration, violation, is that if the partners are choosing back in again, and again with guidance or support from somebody who can facilitate this process, then everything that gets built on top of that is earned and is valued. So trust is built by piece by piece by piece. Loyalty, communication, openness, vulnerability, all those things that maybe you assumed way back at the beginning you were going to have and you never did. So sometimes, and I'm saying this very carefully, not to justify, but sometimes this sort of violation can be the biggest gift ultimately for the relationship if that's where both partners are willing to grow. Yeah. And again, not to make excuses, not to allow it to be an easy out, but to know that there is a future if you want it after infidelity.
Wow. That should all be on like a plaque or a t-shirt or something. Because you're so right. Like people just assume they know how to date, and you and I know that not the truth. They also just assume they don't have to work very hard in a relationship, and they don't even know there's work. I mean, that's going to be one of the future things that I put out there.
I didn't know.
Yes, about how much is too much work, how much is not enough work, because it's work.
Yeah.
Fun, interesting, challenging,
soul
searching. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But to think it's not at all. And the people who say, gosh, we don't feel like we work, and they seem happy, whatever they're doing, they're so well matched that they're just doing, but it's still work.
Yeah.
And that's such a false way of looking at it when you see people like that. Well, they don't have to work. They really are. It's just different. It doesn't look like as much work as if you have some real differences of patterns or difference of real core needs. And you're welcome to get in a relationship with somebody like that, but it's just going to be a little more work.
And you're not able to compare it anyway. So comparing your relationship with somebody else is really a futile effort. So don't even bother.
Yeah, we want to put that on a t-shirt too.
So check out our merchandise store. Check out our merchandise store. We'll have plenty of things to give you.
I love it. So Cece says we're supposed to stop talking, and
it's okay. We'll come back and do another show.
Such a fun, yeah, because we now have other things that like, oh yeah, we have to talk about that. We have to talk about that. So
Indeed.
If you don't want this to happen to you, or it has happened to you, please reach out to Barry or I, because we can help you navigate through it and get stronger on the other side. As you've heard, that can really happen.
Yes, indeed.
Whether you stay with the person or not, we want you to be upright again. We want you to feel like, I know what I'm doing better next time, and I can learn how to trust again. So the way to get a hold of me is initially through my website, which is www.theperfectcatch.com. And you can click on what's holding you back from love and have a complimentary conversation with me. And you can also join my email list through there. I keep forgetting to say that. And then you can also send me a personal, you always remember, you can also send me a personal email at Christine@theperfectcatch.com. And you can see my personal videos I've done, and then all my over 100 videos podcasts I've done with Barry on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Pinterest and YouTube and Facebook. Did I already say Facebook?
You said Facebook already.
Then I forgot one because I didn't do 6.
Instagram.
Thank you. Even though it's not
the long run there.
I think I just write them down.
Yeah.
And how do people get a hold of you, Barry?
Indeed. So you can also reach out to me in a similar way if you need help, guidance, clarity, moving forward, taking the next steps. My website is my name, so easy to find, so barryselby.com. On the front page of that, there is a link to have a mini session with me. I'm putting out a new thing, which basically have a mini session with me that's shorter, so you can test drive my skills, and there's a fee involved. But then you get to navigate and get some things sorted out. See if you want to do deeper work together. So you can do that on my website first on the homepage. And also just to let people know, I'm launching a new program which is called Love After Heartbreak. So this is kind of relevant to that too. But I've got a waitlist for it right now. I don't have it up and running yet, but the waitlist is available. So if you go to barryselby.com/loveafter, there's a little waitlist you can sign up for, and I'll reach out to you, set up a calendar session so we can meet and talk and see if it fits for you. So that's on my website. Also, my social media is all my name, which is Barry Selby. So you can follow me. Definitely, YouTube is where not only the 100+ videos that we've done together, because I've also got over 1,000 videos I did on my own, and a few other podcasts. So go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to that, because there's, I want to say, around 1,500 videos up there now, which will keep you busy for days. Other platforms: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Clubhouse, Pinterest are all Barry Selby, and then Instagram is the odd one out because I've got I had to change my account over, which is now the real Barry Selby, just to make it interesting.
Yes.
So reach out to us, get support. We are both dedicated to helping our clients thrive and enjoy life and have the most love they can have. And if you go through one of these experiences, as you can probably tell from what we talked about, we can help you. So don't hold back.
When they're done that, definitely have the t-shirt to prove it.
Lots of t-shirts apparently today.
And I'm on the roll here. So we're here every Thursday to do a live podcast from 1 o'clock Pacific and 4 o'clock Eastern, and all the times in between. We'd love for you to watch live and submit questions or comments. If you watch it on replay, be sure to send us comments or questions and share it with your friends that are having dating and relationship challenges. We're always looking for new subjects to talk about. We're happy to talk to you individually. And we look forward to seeing you here again next week.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. See you then. Take care of yourselves.
Bye for now.
Bye.